and we're going to get it. But let's get to this show and what we're talking about tonight, because tonight is a big deal. We got the man himself. He is the co-host of Vintage House Show. He is the host of Philosophical Grooves, Chicago's very own Kevin McFall. Kevin, what's happening? How you doing?
Hey, Dewey and Derek. I am honored to be on the show with you guys tonight and to have some great conversation, or as the younger folks say, chop it up with you tonight.
For sure, for sure. Now, this is interesting, right? Because usually you're on the other side of the mic.
This is true. It is. It's nice to be on this side for a change, though.
That's exactly right. So how are you doing as we're coming out of this pandemic, right? We've gone through COVID, or we're coming out of it, so to speak. Maybe people are getting a little too aggressive, but how are you doing?
Well, I'm generally doing well. I'm, certainly thankful to the man up above for keeping my family and I safe. Unfortunately, during this period, I did experience a loss, but my sister will forever be remembered. I know you both were friends of Kelly, and keeping her lifted in spirit. So thankful, to have grown up with having a little sister who, I could look after and love on. But other than that, the pandemic is slowly, moving behind us, and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, and really, the condolences to you. It's always a tough thing. I tell you, it's great to have a community like this house community to rally around us when we go through things. It's one of the phenomenal things about house and what's originated out of Chicago, and such a crazy place. That's still such a crazy place with all the violence and other stuff like that. How house culture just cuts through it all, and we can get together and have a good time and love on each other, and really take care of each other. So I think that's just a beautiful thing about the culture. Tell the folks a little bit about you, your background, where you come from, where you came up from, and how you get interconnect with this thing called house.
I'm like you, Derek. I'm actually inspired that you're going to get back on the decks. I'm going to have to do the same. I keep saying that I'm going to do that, but I started out as a DJ, and I got the name Mega because my DJ name was Kevin Megamix McFall. Wow. That was a mouthful back in the day. And so eventually I cut it down to just Mega. And I've been, embracing that name here and there, but it's hard to be a one name dude out here. Only the greats like Prince,
Right,
can do that. Right. They do it well. But I'm holding on to it. And so I'm a South Sider, grew up in Chatham Village specifically, went to St. Clotilde, which is the school's closed already, and tomorrow is the last church service happening over there on 84th and Calumet. So it's a bit of a melancholy thing, but I want this conversation to be uplifting. I don't want it to be all about things of a gloomy nature. From St. Clotilde, I went to Francis de Sales. I was a Catholic school dude, and St. Francis was an interesting stop because on that far southeast side in the late 70s, early 80s, things were still hot over there if you were a black man or black person, period. And so I spent a lot of time interacting with the Mendel crew, because everybody else on my block went to Mendel. My cousins, my next door neighbors, they were all Mendel Mighty Monarch men, and I have mad respect for the Monarchs. I'm claiming a little honorary Monarch.
That's it.
Affiliation there, and from there I went to the University of Illinois down at Urbana-Champaign, where I actually really felt instrumental in bringing house music to that campus because there was no such thing. When I got there in 81, WBMX was actually being piped into the dorms via a cable connection. You had to figure out how to do a RF coax connection to your receiver to be able to receive WBMX down in Champaign. But we did it. We made it happen, and lost that connection at some point, and we were like, this is not going to work. We're going to have to do something about it. So I formed a crew called BMG. Me, Jerry McAllister, Brad Ritchie, Cedric Ball, Pepe Wilson, Mendel Marnock, and others, Kevin Bell, another Mendel Marnock. We all came together and said, we're going to bring this house thing to Champaign-Urbana. So
that was a lively crew there.
Oh yeah. Me and Jerry McAllister reminisce on it a lot. He and I ended up based in an apartment there as well when he was signed to DJ International doing this thing. So I helped him with some of his career aspirations in terms of getting started, tried to help him with his branding back then and all that good stuff. And eventually I became a publicist, right? I saw that niche that was open in the marketplace. And, a lot of the early house songs were tracks. So there weren't album covers, right, with the artists' faces on the outside jackets of the records. And so someone had to tell the story because people making house music had important stories to tell, and they weren't just track artists, right? They were human beings coming from different walks of life, different levels of creative, formal instruction and not so formal instruction, to become these originators of a genre of music that we're having this conversation about, and is definitely experiencing I won't even call it a resurgence, but it is a surge.
Yes. Yeah. And why do you think that is? I mean, why is this thing just, I talk about 30, 40 years ago, but it is, to your point, it's not a reemergence or resurgence. It's a steady growth. It continues to grow and expand, and it's just amazing. It's worldwide and it's multifaceted. And I think since we got into COVID, people are listening to it even more because it's helping them through these tough times. Why is that?
First and foremost, the saying or colloquialism that house is a feeling, right, is at the center of it, right? And people want to feel good, particularly during a pandemic. And so what better way to invoke that feeling, right, than to turn to house music to experience a good feeling, a feeling of peace, unity, love, spirituality, right? There's a lot of house music that is so inspirational and allows you to I was about to say let your hair down, but I can't do that anymore. But that's what it does, right? It allows you to free yourself and be free in your expression. And so people needed an outlet. And, a lot of people, DJs, remixers, producers, fed that outlet and turned to the interwebs, as they say, and turned up the volume, if you will, on house music.
Yeah, that's for sure. And hey, hello to all listeners out there. We see you. Thanks for joining in. We are just getting situated with the man himself, Mega, co-host of the Vintage House Show and host of the Philosophical Grooves, which we're going to get into a little bit. But tell us a couple of your cool stories about house, because I know you got to have a couple of.
So going back to the days at U of I, what was also interesting, I shared Jerry McAllister was one of my roommates there, but also Joe Smoove attended the University of Illinois
Really?
for a year. Joe, yep. And
that's an interesting fact I did not know.
Joe and I have been, cool since then. We went through some things. But one of the funny stories, whenever I reference Joe and the U of I and vinyl, right, was that very often, you remember the days, and some of us may still do this now, you'd mark your vinyl so that it was identified as belonging to you. It was so funny because we would find vinyl after you DJ'd a party or whatever. You're not always paying attention to the sleeve you put that vinyl into. And Joe was the one whose crate had sort of the most variation of records that came from others in the crew. And we would give him a hard time. Like, Joe, how did our records end up in your crate? And so it was sometimes a running joke. And of course, at some point we had the day of reckoning and everybody got their records back for the most part.
Dewey, you ever clipped some records?
Let's just say I have had more records clipped than I've clipped. It all evens out hopefully in the end, it all even out.
That's right. And of course, that's all but almost gone with, WAV files and MP3s, right?
True.
That's right.
Although there's some digital rights management tools that can help you track, when you copy that digital file, where it goes, for sure.
That's it. Now, you are the co-host of the Vintage House Show. How did that come about? We've had Lori on, we've had Lauren on, we've had a good time, and now you're gonna round it out. Where'd that all evolve from?
Well, you did the right thing by having my partners on first, because they're so lovely and make for great conversation. But I'm thrilled that I'm bringing up the rear here and sharing how I got involved, because interestingly enough, I was the third partner to join the Vintage House crew. Lori and Lauren have been fairly consistent with producing the Vintage House Show on WNUR, Northwestern University's radio station, 89.3 on the FM dial and in HD1. Our broadcast signal is available just about north of Monroe. Everything south of that begins to become KKC. So Lauren's a Northwestern University alum. She's been involved with WNUR for a long time, has a great vision for ensuring the preservation of the house music stories, right? Because there are multiple stories and multitudes of stories. And it's actually Vintage House Show on WNUR is the link. And we've been interviewing some of the pioneering figures of house music, and we've focused a lot on DJs, remixers, producers, but we've also heard the stories from the dancers, the promoters, the people involved with the business facets of house music. And so it is rounding out a very robust story about house music. And what we find most important about it is that we're owning that narrative, not just we as the Vintage House crew, but we as the Chicago house community, the originators, right, of house music, are using this platform to tell, express, convey their various stories about how they got involved, how they've been able to make a living, and very importantly, and I think you wanted to touch upon this, the culture that is house music. House is not just a feeling, it is a culture. It's not just a genre of music. It's fashion. It's lifestyle. There's a very heavy influence from the LGBTQ community as part of the origination of house music. And so all of those things go into the pot of making the blend that is this incredible genre we all know and love. And so the Vintage House Show is that platform for getting these stories told and shared. And, you know, we've got some amazing opportunities coming up. We've partnered with a number of organizations to create a Chicago Home of House traveling exhibit. It was on exhibit at the Epiphany Art Center up until a week or two ago. And stay tuned for the next stop of the Chicago Home of House exhibit, which is, you know, both a timeline and a collection of artifacts of house music.
Well, I tell you what, I just wanted to take my hat off to you guys because there's no question you guys are the authority and the keepers of house, the experience and how it's grown and its stories and the VIPs and all of that. You guys do a tremendous amount of work. And I can't be happier enough. I mean, Dewey and I got together to talk about house, and we didn't realize we were just, you know, aligning ourselves with the mission of the Vintage House Show, which is to just spread the culture and keep that culture flowing. And so we are just thrilled to have you on the show and partner with you guys as you guys continue to be the front runners and foremost authority on this thing called house and telling that story to the community. We appreciate you guys so much for that.
When people look back, and this is another part of the mission, is the sustainability of the culture. But when people look back to try to understand the origin and the things that are both cultural and creative that contributed to how things began and why they're so important to so many of us today, they'll have a record. They'll have house culture conversations. They'll have vintage house stories. They'll have, you know, the records and some of the artists, you know, hopefully some of the new jacks, if you will still be around to continue fostering interest in and love for this genre of music.
Oh man, for sure. Now talk to us about this philosophical grooves and where that comes from.
Yeah, so I'm, you know, sometimes this deep thinking dude, and I sought to marry the deep thinking with you know, the genre of house. And actually I had aspirations to create a record label called Philosophical Grooves. And as that vision morphed, right, it morphed into a podcast where I could tell some of these stories that we've been sharing on the Vintage House Show, and then also combine that with mixes. I've been pulling them out of the library for the most part currently, but like I said, I'm inspired by DLott coming back. And so we're going to have to get some fresh mixes out there on the Philosophical Grooves podcast. And maybe I can come back and drop some of those mixes on Dewey's show.
Absolutely. It's about community and it's about collaboration. And that's one of the things I love so much. One of the things that you talked about when we were talking about the stories and the culture is fashion. And I can't help but recognize, as I was researching you got a little thing for fashion yourself, especially when catching your eyeglass game.
What's interesting is I felt I lost any flair that I might have had during COVID, because it was sweatpants and t-shirts all day long. But yes, the frames, I appreciate the compliment and appreciate that you guys are also connoisseurs of good eyewear. But what was interesting and inspiring to me in the early days as house was evolving, emerging, was how important fashion was. And I had an interesting debate and dialogue with Wayne Williams, because Wayne had there was a post I think Eric Miller put up questioning what was Goody Fest and what was that all about. And my comment was that Goody Fest was about, people wearing Izods and polos and straight leg Levi's and Stan Smith Adidas tennis shoes and coming out to the party. And Wayne came back and said, look, my inspiration for Goody Fest was actually to counter the promotions that were going on, giving people discounts for wearing Izod and polos. It's like that's European influence fashion. We're Southsiders. I want to create an environment that's free of that, and that was the inspiration, he said, for Goody Fest. But in my mind, Goody Fest served to foster greater interest in conforming, right, with that uniform that was the straight leg gym shoe and leather gym shoe kind of party going experience. So
yeah, polo button down,
the polo Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, preppy. It was a preppy vibe that we were all those of us conforming, right?
Yeah, and then if you had a couple bucks, you moved into maybe a little Giorgio Armani. You just tried to get a little more, what do you call it, Italian, right, chic or so. But it was a standard uniform for sure.
Yeah, Fiorucci and Versace or whatever, Armani. Water Tower was part of the culture. Going there, going to Michigan Avenue, you would often see people early in the day, Saturday, right, shopping, so they get ready for that party at the Mendelby level disco or the Loft or Sours, Playground, wherever it was, right? They were getting ready for it.
Getting ready. So, Kevin, I mean, for this commitment that you made to the Vintage House Show, Philosophical Grooves, all you've done. I've seen you in this craze out on 31st Beach as we're getting back to, partying together, and it's just crazy out there. Thousands of people out there. And I think you were out there doing interviews just yesterday, a couple of days ago. Why do you do this work? Why are you doing this?
I'm not asked that often, so I appreciate you asking. It's a passion, but I, like my partners, find it critical that these stories get told about the people, about the music, about the experiences that we all had and share, because we see it all the time, right? When others latch on and tell the story for us, they kind of skew it and they make a lot more money on it, and all sorts of things happen that don't benefit those involved with the the actual creation and evolution. And so we want to disrupt that pattern. And again, very early on, when I stood in the gap of seeing the fact that these faceless track acts, weren't getting the same kind of attention and recognition that other musicians, other music creators were getting, I said, let me begin to knock on the door of Billboard magazine, of Dance Music Report, of Street Sound, of Mix Mag, all of these media outlets that had to pay attention to what was happening in house, but they didn't have to go deep. And so I wanted to ensure that they got the level of depth of coverage that this genre warranted. And so what's interesting, there's often the conversation about some of the DJs that are global in nature, and they get like paid 7-figure fees for making appearances and performing at concerts. And again, that very often gets me pissed off, frankly.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm sitting across from two guys who, were early DJs and understanding the power of creating experiences for the dance floor through the power of the mix. There's no reason that you guys or I should not have, benefited in that way.
Gotta cut. Where my cut?
So, it's important to me, I guess, when you think about wanting to leave a legacy, right? I want to ensure that my legacy has something to do with ensuring that, the creators, the originators of this genre get their due.
Hey, man, I feel you. Hey, Dewey, what's your thoughts on that?
Kevin is absolutely right. And he and Lori and Lauren are actually doing the work that needs to be done to bring that to fruition. What we need to do is kind of find a way to envelop all of these genres of house and bring them all together so we all can benefit from some of those 7-figure salaries, because it's good music. Good music should override everything.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's well said. Hey, well, Kevin, again, tipping my hat off to you. Where do you see this thing going?
The future of house, crystal ball. Look, one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that we're trying to do is to bring up the next generation of DJs, remixers, producers, house artists. We want house to sustain. We know that it's going to evolve, right? And so certainly the roots of it, as I shared, are important. And I think the roots give birth to new growth. And so I expect to see some innovation continuing to happen in this genre of house music. It is still going to have a soul, which I think is most important, because without the soul, you have other things, other genres, and no disrespect to those genres, but house has soul. So
yeah, absolutely. Well
it will continue. The future should reflect that at a minimum.
Yeah. Hey, well, Kevin, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. A chance to hang out with the man himself. And tell us about Vintage House Show, when it airs, Philosophical Grooves.
Absolutely. Tune in to the Vintage House Show on Wednesday nights. We broadcast live on WNUR 89.3 FM at 10 p.m. Central each Wednesday. We've split the month up, so it's varied. We have our Vintage House Show Spotlight series, which is what is the platform for promoting some of those emerging artists. And then we have Vintage House Show Stories, or the Vintage House Show series, in which Lori Branch or myself bring artists into the studio or remotely to talk to them about their origin stories. And we sometimes, get great, amazing global artists like Lori had Honey Dijon on. And, it's really, I enjoy, even watching and listening to our shows. So you can hear us on WNUR.org on their live stream. And then, of course, on our Facebook page and Twitch.tv, the Vintage House Show. Philosophical Grooves has been publishing on a very sporadic basis. But again, I'm inspired tonight, so I think I'm going to head into the lab and try
Awesome. Hey, well, again, thank you so much for doing it. DJ Dewey B is about to hit the tables and get on twitch.tv/DJ Dewey B. And we're going to be looking for Philosophical Grooves and see you on the Vintage House Show. On their Facebook page, you can catch all their episodes, and you can catch this episode. And I love what you said about this is an archive. There are artifacts left of the culture that will be out there into the future for many generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Kevin McFall, a.k.a. Mega. We're going to see you next time. Everybody take care. House Culture Conversation signing off. Peace.
Thank you, guys. It was an honor.